Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm 3.5 years into the industry. I spent my career pretty much since graduating college working in ad tech with app developers, really a year after the iPhone came out. And 3.5 years ago, I guess 4 years ago, I was looking at the cannabis industry because I just had so much fun being a part of a new emerging wild west of an industry. And so initially that was kind of my focus on cannabis, and little did I know that cannabis would just entirely change my life being a part of this industry. I'm having the time of my life. At Headset, what I'm doing is I clarified, I'm not an analyst. I write a lot about what I'm learning, and that's because I'm basically traveling around the country, or a lot of Zoom meetings where I'm meeting with brands, retailers, associations, policymakers, investors, anyone that's really looking to understand the markets and kind of what we're learning from Headset. And so I'm just learning a ton about what it's like to build a business across all categories within cannabis. And then in my personal life, my partner, who is actually here, and I'm going to put him on blast, is the co-founder and CEO of Guild Extracts. And so I've been watching everything that he's been going through, being a concentrate brand in California, and just learning a ton from him on the day-to-day operations. And it's helping me make a lot more sense of all the data. And so what I'm going to touch on today, and why I'm really excited to be talking about beverages, is because cannabis as a whole, as we know, is a new and emerging industry, right? But beverages within cannabis are even more new than other traditional categories, right? Like flower. And so is there a clicker? Oh, right on. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to focus on where beverages are at today. I'll talk a little bit about the national market, but I'm going to focus on California. I'm assuming, how many people here are focused on the California market? Okay, majority. And how many people are looking at other states or Canadian provinces? Okay, cool. I'll try to touch on that as much as possible. And then I'll talk about some future predictions. All right. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar, what we do at Headset, we are a cannabis data and analytics company. We were started by the founders of Leafly 7 years ago. So Cy, Brian, and Scott still with us to date. And what we do at Headset is we're really a software company. And so what we do is we provide dispensaries a piece of software where they give us their API key. We plug that into our system, and we pull in all of their historical data from when they've been using that point of sale system, and we turn all that data into actionable reports and visualizations that the dispensary uses to manage their inventory and understand who their customers are. And then what we do on the back end is we're taking all of that aggregated point of sale data, and once we have a statistically sound enough sample size of data in a market, so seeing somewhere around 20% of sales, that gives us enough of a sample size to forecast all of that data up and then be able to report in real time what people are buying. And so to do this is a really extensive or intensive process, I should say. Let's see. Okay, this thing is being a little buggy. Okay, so this is a pretty intensive process. As an industry, we don't yet have UPC codes, and so what our team has to do is we have to go through and normalize all of that data from the point of sale system, right? So we have to go through and we have to say, as someone's putting in, Blue Dream, they could put that in as Blue Space Dream, Blue Dreams. There's a bunch of different variations. So we go through, we normalize all that data, we cleanse the data, and then very simply put, we're using a combination of robots, humans, and AI to forecast that data up for the entire market. So what I'm going to be talking to today is going to be all real-time data, and I'm specifically going to be focusing on a couple of U.S. markets. So California, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Michigan, and then 4 Canadian provinces. So Alberta, BC, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. And so what I want to start with is a look at how beverage sales have been performing over the last 2 years or 3 years. So what we're looking at here is the beverage market share. In purple is going to be our U.S. sales, and in red is going to be Canada. And so what we've seen is that market share has really remained rather stable since 2018. Okay, so we can see that market share is anywhere between 0.85% and 1.1% over the last 3 years. And what we see is that market share really at the end of 2019 and through mid-2020, we start to see that sales actually start to decline a little bit. And then we start to see sales stabilize and increase over the last 6 months. And this is pretty in line with what we're seeing as a whole in cannabis sales. And so I'm going to touch on that in a moment here. All right. So I want to talk to just California for a second. Come on, guy. All right. So this is what our sales have looked like in California over the last 2-year period. So October of 2019 through October of 2021. And what we can see here is that the category sales are going to be in light blue and the market share is going to be in dark blue. So as you can see, beverage sales have had some pretty great growth. We start to see in June of this year, we start to see some declines. And this has actually been happening for cannabis as a whole. This isn't just specific to beverage. And we got hit up from a lot of people that were saying, hey, what are you guys seeing? And this was around summertime. Are other businesses struggling right now? Because we're starting to see some declines. And what we started to see that this was actually happening in cannabis as a whole. And around June, we started to see that a lot of other leisure industries were having the same kind of trends. So in particular, DIY industries, subscription services like Netflix, and then alcohol delivery companies were also seeing some of these same trends. And that was most likely just because people are out again. The world was opening up at that point. So many people hadn't gone on vacation for 2+ years. So we just started to see a lot of leisure activities seeing some declines. So what we're seeing in beverages, very in line with what we're seeing in the overall cannabis market. Now, one of the things to think about and the really exciting thing about beverages is that there's just so many different types of beverages, right? So at Headset, we want to look at the different segments that are in beverages. And so for us, we classify those segments as carbonated beverages, drops, mixed in elixirs, iced teas, carbonated waters, milks, etc. And so what we can see here is that in blue, that's going to be carbonated beverages. So this is making up most of the market share in beverages at this point. This is all California data. And one of the really interesting things is that because this is such an emerging industry, we're seeing so much product innovation. When we look at 2018, in 2018, there were 3 top brands, the 3 beverage brands were making up 32% of the overall beverage sales. And now what we've seen in this year is that the top 3 beverage brands are making up 22% of total beverage sales. And so what this is saying to us is there's a lot more product innovation. There's a lot more consumers coming into the market that are consuming different types of beverages. And so you can actually see that correlation in some of these categories. So like when we're looking at waters, for example, so I don't know if you can see this, but in the green, that's things like when we see Lagunitas come onto the market, we start to see increases in the overall beverage category because of a handful of producers. And so to me, this is really exciting that there's that opportunity to shift an entire segment or category based off of a couple of brands. Okay, so who is buying beverages? So everyone is buying beverages. But what we're looking at here is an index of beverage sales by demographic group. So females are going to be in purple, orange is going to be males. And what we can see here is that it's generally females are buying more beverages. And it's going to be older generations that are buying more beverages. So Gen X is seeing the most beverage sales, Gen X women. So this is going to be people from 40 to about 56 years of age. And then, of course, millennials. And baby boomers. And so what we want to think about is Gen Z, right? So Gen Z, these are people that are turning 21. They're aging into the market every day. And so they're currently seeing the least, spending the least on beverages, but I think that's a signal there's a lot of opportunity for new product innovation and branding to really target this demographic group. So one of the reasons that our analysts, I should also say, we've been tracking the market in beverages for 5 years, and for the basically until this year, our analysts were bearish on the category. On that first slide, when I showed that beverage sales have remained stable around that 1% mark of total sales. Well, this year, our analysts have been much more bullish on the market. And one of the reasons for that is we're seeing more people try beverages. So we're seeing beverages show up in more carts. And so what we're looking at here is the percentage of U.S. cannabis consumers that are purchasing beverages. And so what I want to point out here is that in 2019, so that second graph, to 2020, we've seen a purchase increase rate of 10% from consumers. So if we're looking at 2021 and we're at 6.6%, if we keep trending on the path that we're currently on, we're going to see that number at about 7% by the time the year ends. So what this means is that 7% of current cannabis consumers have tried a beverage. So this makes our analysts really excited just seeing this growth year over year, more people trying beverages, more beverages showing up in the basket. Now, one of the things that we want to think about is beverages are really interesting because most people aren't going into a store to purchase beverages on their own. Beverages are really an add-on item at this point, and they have high attachment rates to other categories in cannabis. So if we look at the top in purple, that's beverages only. Okay, so it's about 23% of people are going into a dispensary, and all they're purchasing in their basket is simply a beverage. But if we look in teal, that's edibles, okay? And that's 34.4% of the time that someone purchases a beverage, they're also purchasing an edible. There's also high attachment rates with flower, so you can see that in bright green. So that's 26.7%. And then pre-rolls at 24%. And so what this is saying is that if you're a retailer, one consideration you would want to have, knowing that beverages are an add-on item, is you would consider having beverages at the point of checkout. So have them closer to where people are purchasing. Or you could do things like when you see that high attachment rate with edibles, that's a great opportunity to do a bundle deal or an offer with an edible brand. So those are some of the things you want to think about, beverages being this add-on item. Okay, so here, another interesting thing that we've been seeing at Headset is really the shift in the serving size or milligrams per beverage. So if we think back to 2018, that's going to be that first line or that first chart. A lot of the market was really made up of these high-dose beverages, okay, these 100-milligram beverages. And so what we saw at that point in 2018 was 47.4% of beverages were this 100-milligram beverage. 100 milligrams of THC. And then on the opposite side, on the far left, that's the low dose beverages. So up to 0.5 or 5 milligrams of THC. And that was at 14.4%. So as we look over the years, what we're really seeing is we're seeing the middle shrink, and we're seeing more people either choose high-dose beverages or low-dose beverages. And so now when we're looking at 2021, that last line there, we're seeing that 59.8% of sales are going to these high-dose 100-milligram beverages. And again, this is aggregated data for all of those markets that I mentioned. So California, Colorado, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Michigan, and Massachusetts. And we're really seeing that compression in the middle, okay? So people are really looking at either these low-dose beverages or high-dose beverages. Okay. All right, so now that we have an understanding of kind of where sales have been at over the last year, I think one of the things that we're all asking is what can we expect from beverages in the future? And I don't want to talk too far into the future because every market is so different based on policies and regulations. And so what we want to think about is just in this media. So we've done some forecasting at Headset, and we're looking at through 2022, we're expecting a 25% increase in beverage sales. A lot of other categories in cannabis, like flower, for example, concentrates, these are experiencing higher growth rates. And I think one of the things that we all want to ask ourselves or that we're wondering is, okay, well, why is that? And what do we need to do to have beverages have higher growth rates? And so that's really what I want to talk about, is kind of how we can predict where we're going to be going. So I think we need to look at some of the current challenges with the beverage market. And I'm going to speak a little bit more to California in specific when I'm going through this. But there's really two main buckets that I'm seeing as the challenges for beverages right now. This is supply chain challenges, and then these are demand challenges. So on the supply side, the biggest challenges are limitations in co-packing and manufacturing, packaging materials, distribution, and retail sales outlets. I'm going to touch on these in a moment here. And then the demand challenges are a lack of consumer awareness, a shift in consumption behavior. We're teaching people something new, a new way to consume. And then social stigma barriers that we're still overcoming. Okay, so what can we do to overcome some of these challenges? So on the supply side, several things here. So we need to increase our manufacturing capacity. So very simply put, we need more licensing and we need less regulations. So I'm glad to hear that there's some new beverage co-packers that are coming online here, because that's one of the challenges with beverages specifically. If you think about how many manufacturers or co-packers there are in California, there's really, 4 main ones. I think Rick from Tinley is speaking right now. I know Ave is also speaking from Space Station. There's really 4 main co-packers and manufacturers that can service the entire state at scale. Now, if you think about concentrates or vapes, there's dozens of manufacturers that are helping within that category. Beverage is just not the same. So we really need to have more of those types of companies to be able to fulfill all of the demand that's coming from people who want to create beverages. Okay, and then we need alternate supply sources for packaging materials and form factors. Obviously, through COVID, we're having major supply chain issues. And when a lot of the bottles, the cans, any of the pourable drinks, a lot of these are coming from China, right? And so one of the things that we could think about is, are there options for us to be creating these beverages domestically? Are there options for us to create the packaging domestically? And I do know that there are several different cannabis brands that are really doing this and trying to promote that as a part of their brand, everything made in America or made in California. So that's one thing that we should be thinking about. Another thing that we need to be thinking about is maturation of distribution solutions and infrastructure. Distribution within beverages is really hard. This is also the same challenge as manufacturers and co-packers. There's just not enough distributors that are able to service beverage manufacturers in California at this point. And so we see a lot of licenses that are that have been released for distribution, right? I think there's actually more distribution licenses than there are retail licenses in California. But the challenge is that there's really only 4 main distributors that are doing this for beverage, right? So these are like Vincent June from Nabis, Space Station is doing this. But to be able to distribute to the entire state of California, have a large enough car fleet to do this, and the people that are willing to carry these large beverages as opposed to a small box of concentrates or much lighter weight, this is pretty limited right now. And so this has been a huge challenge for beverage manufacturers. So we need more distribution that can service the state at scale. And then lastly, we need more retail channels, licensing, and outlets. So right now in California, we've got 850 storefronts that are open, 300 delivery licenses. We're a state of 40 million people. This simply is not enough outlets for distribution. And as a point of context, if you think about Oregon's a state of 4 million people, and they have the same amount of storefronts that we do here in California. So this just simply is not enough retail to service the demand that we have. Okay, so now on the demand side, what we need to be thinking about here is we really need to increase consumer awareness. A lot of people are familiar with cannabis, but we're having so many new people come into cannabis that beverages are new for them. They don't necessarily know how or why you would consume a beverage. So we really need to increase awareness of beverages overall within cannabis. And one of the things that we could think about is we could have more campaigns to educate people to socialize beverage consumption. So I think Ginger and Aaron from the Cannabis Beverage Association are here today. I know they're working on this. So it's getting groups of beverage manufacturers together that are going to do something like the milk industry did with the Got Milk campaign, or kind of talking about this Cali Sober, or something like, what Las Vegas did. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We need these campaigns that are going to teach people, when do you consume beverages? Why do you consume beverages? Showing them different times in which you would do this. That's going to help educate people as a whole. Okay, and then we need more direct-to-consumer marketing and distribution channels. So a lot of the beverage manufacturers are saying, hey, I can't get into retail. I have a really hard time getting into retail. I need to go direct-to-consumer. And we're starting to see more solutions pop up. Rowie Eatery launched Ginger, a D2C platform, a couple months ago. So I'm seeing more beverage manufacturers in particular look at these D2C channels, but we simply need more of them. And so one thing that we should be thinking about there is, consumption, or more consumption licenses. We need more opportunities for people to be able to be consuming in other outlets that isn't just purchasing from retail. So if we think about, Bottle Rock, right? Just a few weeks ago, people are going to Bottle Rock because they have the opportunity not just to listen to music, but to taste wines from all across California. So just imagine when we're able to do this for cannabis, right? Imagine when we're able to have tourism for cannabis. People, for alcohol, for beverages, for liquor, people want to be a part of that. They want to be able to go to a facility. They want to go to a vertically integrated operation and learn about how that product is made. They want to taste it. If we have opportunities like that in cannabis beverages, this is going to increase the market share. It's going to increase sales as a whole. And that's really exciting for the future. And then in the immediate, we need more support between retail and brand collaboration. This is a pretty challenging thing to do because in California, like I said, there's 850 storefronts. The brand landscape is much larger. So what's happened is that there's really an unequal power dynamic between retailers and brands. So I'll talk to a lot of retailers and I'll ask them, hey, how many times a day are you getting a cold email or being pitched from a brand? And I'm hearing responses from 20 times a day, upwards of 150 times a day. And so when you think about that power dynamic, it's really an unequal or an uneven marketplace. And so retailers and brands should be partnering together more closely, especially for the beverage category, and giving brands opportunities to come in and do those demo days. It's really hard to do tastings at this point. Obviously, this isn't fully legal for THC to be in it yet, but there has to be more opportunity for the brands and retailers to collaborate to help the brand push that. And that could also be things like doing billboards or whatever joint marketing opportunities are available, partner together. And this is something that I'm still seeing happening today between this retailer and brand collaboration. So I touched on cannabis tourism. I'm really excited about cannabis tourism. I think this is going to be a huge key to us growing this category as a whole. But really, all of those things combined, I think are what's going to help get us to the next level. We're going to see much more than a 25% growth. And so I'm really excited about the future of beverages. We have a little bit of a ways to go, but just based off of what we're seeing today, of more people having beverages in their carts, more people trying beverages, this is a really strong signal of the growth. And so we have some work to do, but no doubt this will be something that we can get through in our relatively immediate future. So any questions? Yes.
Going back to the California slides, I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting them correctly, because they were very informative. So basically the entire aggregate dollar size of the California beverage market is about $5 million.
We did $40 million last year in total sales in California for the beverage category. This year, I have not calculated that all up, but yeah, around $4 million a month is what we're seeing in California. This is adult use sales, by the way, that we're looking at here. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention on this, because we're pulling all the data directly from the point of sale system, we are not tied in with Ease, for example. So there are several large-scale delivery companies to which this data does not reflect. But our analysts are confident that these numbers are reflecting, we pull in state tax data, so these numbers are reflective of the beverage category as a whole in California, but there are some of those data points like the Ease delivery that's not included here. Also things like grass stores as well.
So 4 million a month representing approximately 1.0% of market share.
Yes, correct. Yes.
The other slide you had, I think before that or after it, there's one other on California.
The segment breakdown? Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I see. So that is, I see. So yeah, so carbonated experience.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And do you have any comments about that beyond what you said already?
On carbonated beverages as a whole?
On carbonated and kind of why?
I don't know. It's potentially just because we see, this is right, Can and Wonder and a lot of these large scale producers that have beautiful marketing, beautiful branding. They're really out there. And also just seeing how much carbonated beverages on the alcohol side as well. I'd imagine that's kind of affecting this. Yeah, you're welcome. What's up?
I noticed you didn't have price on there as sort of a barrier to the market. Like when, nothing in Space Station, but when Space Station's charging like $1 a can to produce these things, not including ingredients, how are we going to bring a 4-pack of 5% or 5 milligram rather beverages down from $30, right?
I know, yeah.
Packs, you guys are paying $1 something at Space Station. I mean, I guess you kind of touched on it with opening up more manufacturing. But do you think that price is a big factor here? Oh, yeah, definitely. Price is a very big factor. What I would say to that is I know, so Can, for example, so maybe some of this is in the marketing, right? Because Can charges 8x what the average price is for beverages. And they can do that because of the brand that they built. People view it as a luxury brand, so they're able to charge that price point. But price point as a whole, or price as a whole across pretty much every category, we're experiencing what we call a race to the bottom pricing. And so, yeah, you have to be at a point of scale to be able to decrease your prices. I have a lot of friends that are building companies that cannot decrease their prices because they're not at a point of scale, and now they're faced with a very tough decision of, are we going to be able to stay alive or not without that? So they're looking for, manufacturers that can help them get to that point of scale. But I don't know. Without diving into P&Ls of these companies or whatever, are the bigger players, the Wonders, the Cans, the Keeps, et cetera, are they profitable at this point? And I don't know, and I don't want to speculate, but I have a lot of friends running those companies, and to be honest, across the board, this is a challenge. This is a very challenging industry. Most people that I'm personally talking to are not profitable. But I don't want to put I don't know for cans specifically, but it's a tough industry. Beverages are also very costly to produce. In my opinion, working with producers in all categories, this is one of the toughest categories to build a product in. A lot of challenges, but I'm so excited about beverages because beverages are destigmatizing cannabis as a whole. It's bringing in new consumers that have never tried cannabis before. So when we think about the long-term potential of beverages, it is a little bit of a longer game, but there is so much opportunity. What's that?
With that in mind, what's your expectation for the timeline for hitting that inflection point? Can that happen pre-federal legalization? And if so, is 2023 going to be the year of cannabis beverage when we saw that 1% instead of stalling out, start to take an uptick?
Yeah. Every year for the last 5 years has been the year of beverages. Well, I mean, here's the reality when we look at a lot of those challenges, and again, I'm speaking to California, every state has its different nuances. But when we look at what's happening in California, and we saw that the last 6 months, sales have been stabilizing and actually have been decreasing. And then we look at that we're not having any, relief at the state level on taxes, or there's not policy that's making it easier for people to run a business. If it's not getting easier, then can we really expect more than 4 co-packers? Can we expect more than 4, large-scale beverage distribution companies? This is a really tough industry to be a part of, and right now is not an easy time in California. So if we're not having some outside dynamic that's going to change that, I don't know, how could we expect sales are going to, drastically increase? So I don't know, 2023, maybe.
Are you seeing any data that shows a flight from retail, traditional standalone brick and mortar retail, to D2C in the beverage space?
I don't have any of that data, but anecdotally speaking, a lot of my beverage manufacturer friends are saying, I can't keep going to retail. They're basically doing velocity plays. It's really hard to service the entire state. This is so costly, the cost of not only customer acquisition, but of acquiring retailers and maintaining those stores, staying top of mind with budtenders. This is so costly to do, and it's just not realistic to do this for a state of 40 million people when these stores are spread throughout the state. So a lot of people are doing velocity plays, and they're saying, all right, I'm not going to service 700 stores. I'm going to service 30 stores, especially for beverages, because beverages do well in specific stores, like Sweet Flower, for example. Sweet Flower has in Los Angeles, they have a whole beverage section. Or Eric Murray, who's launching Rosemary Jane here in Oakland, right on Lake Merritt. He's going to have a whole beverage bar there. But not a lot of retailers are really doing that yet for beverages, nor understand beverages. And so that's the decision that beverage manufacturers are making, is saying, hey, I'm going to be strategic. I'm focusing my time on these handful of stores. That's it. And then I'm going to do a D2C play. I don't have the data on what that looks like, but anecdotally, I hear a lot of people talking about it.
Has Tech going to consider doing kind of bifurcating the markets to look at that and analyze it?
We've been talking about that for a long time. We've been talking about doing regionalized data. It's just, we're doing these market reads on 15 different markets. We're a team of 70 people, about 70 people, and this is the amount of work that goes in. This is all real-time data. So you can imagine like the amount of work that goes into launching a read on a market and then trying to get it regionalized. We know there's differences in regions, right? All you have to do is go from Oakland to San Francisco and you're going to see a difference in the stores and trends. But we'll get there, but it's not on our immediate roadmap. Yeah. Oh.
Hey, what's the next slide? I think it was the one that was showing a breakdown.
Yeah, this clicker just is not being friendly.
Oh, it was the one that showed down like the gender. And
oh, yes. Okay, well, hit me with your question as I'm... And I'll send this out as well. I'm sure Sid or the team will send this out. Is this the one?
Yeah, okay. So, that's 2020. I was going to ask, is that typically what you see, like as far as the gender breakdown, like the women are buying much more?
Yes. Yes, definitely when it comes to beverages.
Is this California data, or would you say?
This particular slide is aggregated for all of those markets that I mentioned: California, Colorado, Nevada, Massachusetts, Michigan, Oregon, and Washington.
Okay, all right.
So the question I have is, CBD drinks have not been brought up at all.
Right. This is just THC adult use stores.
But is CBD drinks helping or hurting the cannabis drink market? Because obviously CBD drinks are a lot cheaper than cannabis drinks.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. We haven't been studying.
I know it can be distributed a lot easier than.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and more access, more retail opportunity.
And one other question: are people that are doing cannabis drinks pricing things for the three-tier market, like with alcohol beverages?
Good question. I'm not seeing that as much yet. No, and this is something. Exactly. So this good, better, best pricing. So this is in traditional CPG industries. We're starting to see this in other categories, right? You see this in flower, you see this in vape. You start to see those 3 different pricing tiers: value pricing, mid-tier pricing, high-end luxury pricing. I'm not seeing that as much in beverages yet. I suspect that's because beverages are so hard to produce. And so being able to have multiple SKUs within beverages at different price points, I just don't know that there's enough producers that are able to do that at this current point.
I'm just curious if this includes adult vape as well.
This is going to be anything that's coming through the point of sale system in dispensaries. Then if there's Delta 8 in it, then yes, it would include that. But this is all adult use sales, anything that's sold through a recreational dispensary.
You mentioned Canada earlier. I just need any more thoughts or comments on what's going on in Canada?
I think because beverages were a point of their 2.0 in Canada, and so that's why we saw in those first 5 months, they already exceeded the market share in California, so they're at 1.5% market share in Canada. I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the Canadian market. We do see some things like Canadians purchasing like concentrates less or really high potency products. They tend to be purchasing less. And I don't know if that's because there's a lot more regulations in Canada. So I don't know if maybe because beverages are more attuned to like new consumers, right? There's a lot of people can be scared of inhalables. So a lot of people that are new to cannabis find beverages as a much safer category. So I don't know if because Canada is federally legal and because this is new for more people, perhaps that's increasing market share there. I don't really have a great answer for that.